Welcome to No Te Rindas Intermediate English, a podcast for hispanohablantes que quieren mejorar su comprensión auditiva del inglés de los Estados Unidos. Somos dos profesores americanos con raíces mexicanas. Yo soy Gabe o Gabo, here as always with my brother Greg o Goyo.
Hello. It's been a while since we've been on the air, Gabe. It's good to be back with you. Yeah, when we last were talking, the University of Georgia football team was maybe number one in the country, but that has changed. They ended up going into the playoffs, and then they were defeated by Notre Dame, a historically Catholic college in Indiana. I have friends that went to the game because we live in the South, and the game was played in New Orleans, which is also in the South. So a friend of mine from school went to the game, and oyentes, I don't know if you remember this, if you heard about this on the news, but a terrorist drove his vehicle into a crowd of people in New Orleans in what's called the French Quarter. And people died and people were injured. And, it really obviously changed the nature of the game. The game was delayed by one day, so it wasn't played until the next day. And he says that the mood of the people in the stadium was affected. It was very different. There was a type of sobriety or seriousness, or distractedness to the people in the stadium. But New Orleans is an important city to Gabe and me, oyentes, because nuestra abuela emigró a Nueva Orleans desde Tabasco, México, hace un siglo. Y yo personalmente vivía en Nueva Orleans. Entonces, oír de esta tragedia en el contexto de una ciudad que conozco bien, bueno, me dio mucha pena.
So your friend went to this American football game in New Orleans to see the University of Georgia play against Notre Dame, and it was the day that the game was supposed to be played. This terrorist attack with the truck driving into a crowd happened, and you're saying that the game had to be delayed by a day out of respect for what happened, and that the mood, the way the people behaved at the game was not as happy or as excited, as they normally would at a college American football game. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Atrasó el partido por un día, y si el humor de la gente cambió. Y la gente se portaba más distraída o afectada por la muerte, por el terrorismo. Sí. Now, in your case, you also have some football news before we get started on our episode today. Tell us what's going on with your Tennessee Titans.
Gabe and Goyo and their American football fascination. So we were just talking about college football playoffs. The professional football playoffs are also happening. The NFL is the league of professional football here, or at least the main one that counts. And so those playoffs are happening now. So today there are two games, and the winner of each game will go to the championship. And in professional football, the championship is called the Super Bowl. So this is an exciting time. Now, unfortunately, my team, the Tennessee Titans, was officially the worst team in football. So el peor equipo de fútbol americano.
Yeah, you predicted that too, I remember.
Yeah, we were not good this year. And
well, let's jump into our topic today. Today we have a special guest that is a really unique fit, a unique personality or presence for our podcast in particular. He is a lover of language, and he teaches English as a second language. He teaches English to those learning English for the first time near Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I also live near Atlanta, Georgia, so my guest and I have broken bread together, as we say. We've sat down and had a cup of coffee and talked face to face. And I'm very excited to introduce him to all of you. Now, Gabe, who does not live in Georgia, lives in North Carolina, actually sort of introduced me to our guest, Mike Ben, several months ago. And I've been a guest on his YouTube channel. And we'll put a link to that interview in the description if you want to find out more about my Spanish-speaking journey, which is the subject of his YouTube channel. But we're going to listen to him talk about teaching English and learning languages today, Gabe.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have him on the show. I heard him on one of my favorite podcasts, which is for people who are learning Spanish, called No Hay Tos. And I heard him interviewed, and I was just so impressed with his story, which he will hopefully tell us some of today. And when I found out he lived near Atlanta, I had to let you know so that you guys could talk. So let's get right to it. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say.
All right. Oyentes, welcome to a very special episode of No Te Brindas Intermediate English. Hoy tenemos un visitante súper involucrado en el mundo del idioma extranjero en Estados Unidos. Se llama Mike Ben, or Mike Benjamin. Mm-hmm. What do you want to go by, Mike?
Mike Ben is fine for today.
Okay, so Mike is an extraordinary person in that he has taught himself Spanish, fluent, beautiful Spanish, primarily, not entirely, but primarily by using YouTube and online tools. Entonces vamos a usar el español un poquito o mucho en este episodio para que vean lo que es posible con el aprendizaje del idioma. Entonces, Mike, dinos un poco de ti.
Pues, hola chicos, mi nombre es Mike Ben, yo tengo 29 años, yo soy de Estados Unidos, yo soy de las afueras de la ciudad de Atlanta, Georgia. Y como Greg mencionó, yo empecé a aprender español hace 5 años. Por casualidad, un día en enero del año 2020 estaba escuchando unos clips de audio de lecciones de español. Empecé a intentar aprender como una prueba, como un juego, y desde ahí realmente cogí un interés muy grande en el idioma y desde ahí empecé a aprender. Digamos, más tarde podemos hablar un poco de mi proceso de aprender, pero obviamente me escuchan hablando, entonces saben que hablo el idioma, entre comillas, bien, yo diría. O sea, yo no soy perfecto, yo no hablo como un nativo, pero me defiendo. Y aparte de mi aprendizaje de español, yo soy maestro. Cuando empecé a aprender español, era maestro de matemáticas en una escuela para estudiantes de grado sexto hasta octavo, pero me convertí a través de aprender español, me convertí en un maestro de inglés para estudiantes que vienen a Estados Unidos, que tienen papás que hablan otros idiomas. Entonces ahora enseño matemáticas y también doy clases ahora enseño inglés, y también doy clases de matemática, pero sí.
O sea, oyentes, él tiene experiencia en el proceso de aprender segundo idioma y también enseña inglés. Entonces tenemos una oportunidad, Gabe, increíble to talk to someone who's been through the extremely hard work of learning how to go from one language to another, and yet also he's going to tell us about how they learn English, which is the purpose of our show.
Right. Es importante que sepan que un clave de su aprendizaje es que él tenía un amigo mexicano o dos amigos mexicanos que hablaba, sí, mucho, hablaba con ellos, tenías conversaciones con ellos con frecuencia, ¿sí?
Sí, sí, sí. De hecho, después de como, y no es algo que recomiendo hoy en día, pero después de unas semanas, creo que después de un mes y medio, contraté un tutor en una plataforma en línea de la Ciudad de México y también otra que era, pues es, porque todavía somos amigos, es de Bogotá, Colombia. Y a través del proceso, o sea, me encontraba con muchas personas, y básicamente lo que hacíamos eran intercambios de idioma, básicamente. Entonces, una
Mm.
semana hablábamos en inglés, la otra hablábamos en inglés, en español. Pero, de nuevo, además de los intercambios, también contrataba tutores que me ayudaban bastante.
What was the name of the product that you used or the online platform that you used to meet these people?
So for the actual tutors, the platform is called italki, italki.com. And it's basically a platform where native Spanish speakers and really English speakers as well, in all languages, it's not just Spanish, but native speakers of a language offer their language services. They have a wide range of people there that are either professional teachers that actually teach in like that in a way that's similar to a professional setting. And then they also have what they call community tutors, which are just people offering their conversations services, I guess. And they'll correct you and they'll guide you, but they're pretty much just offering conversations. And so I use that for the tutors. And then to find language exchange partners. At that time, guys, italki had a section on their website where you could meet other people and do
Mm.
language exchanges. So I met some people like that. And again, those people I'm still friends with. They invite me to visit them in Mexico and Colombia all the time. Some of them
Oh,
have recently moved to the United States. Yeah, some of them have recently moved to the United States. So one of them lives in Michigan, so I'll go visit them soon and all that kind of stuff. But either way, I use italki, but there are others that are still out there now, like Tandem. Like, for example, I went to Peru and I met one of my language exchange partners and their family from Tandem. They showed me around Lima, Peru. And then there's another one called Hello Talk. I'm not the biggest fan of Hello Talk because I'm just going to be honest. There's a lot of, in Spanish, they say, ¿qué es lo que dicen? Motivos escondidos, digamos. Like, there are people there looking to date and do other things like that. It's not as serious as I've found the other ones to be, but yeah.
sí,
Estafadores
igual,
también, sí.
igual.
Exactamente. Exactly. Asking for money and stuff like that. So that one, I'm not, you have to filter a little bit better on that one, but for the most part, those are the sites that I use.
So it's interesting that you mentioned Tandem and Hello Talk and italki because Gabe and I use all three of those
Mhm.
on some occasion. Tengo pues 6 hasta 10 amigos que diría son buenos amigos en Tandem que
Mhm.
mantengo hace 2, 3 años y he conocido, como tú, he conocido 3 personas frente a frente por,
Mhm.
la app. Y
Mhm.
Gabe practicó el uso de Hello Talk
Mhm.
por 6 meses, creo. Y Gabe, what would you say about Hello Talk that he didn't say?
I found some of the same things. I met a lot of very friendly men, and then I met some women who seemed to think that maybe I was interested in dating them, and of course they were surprised when I was just interested in speaking Spanish. But I think
Mhm.
the real key for all of us is I think Greg and I are big believers in comprehensible input and the importance of hearing natives speak the language so that your brain can absorb the target language. And then the production kind of comes after. What is fun to me about you, Mike, is that you sort of broke that rule. You started producing, excuse me, you started producing the language very early. But you didn't take a year and just try to absorb Spanish. You started trying to speak it. And as a result, in my opinion, as both students of Spanish, you speak better Spanish than I do. The real key, there does seem to be a real key element in making opportunities to speak the language and not just to listen to it. I get a lot of opportunities to hear Spanish. I don't get as many opportunities to speak it, at least not without having to pay someone to do it,
Mhm.
But anyway, you have helped me shift my thinking some, because I have always thought, well, you need to wait a little while and don't force talking. And so it looks like there are a number of ways that we can accomplish the same task.
Yeah, and I would add to your point, Gabe. I think that there is value in waiting to speak. I definitely think that there are pros and cons to all of it. But to me, part of the learning a language process is avoiding the desire, like removing the desire to quit. Like wanting to quit is very, very, very heavy in that process. And what's one of the keys to not, what's something that keeps you motivated to learn when you can speak better, when you're like, wow, I just communicated an idea. So even if it's not the most efficient, the most practical step in terms of, what's ideally the best way to learn the language or to produce the language, I think it's like a little hack that can help you stay motivated as well. And it was for me, like just I would be excited for my conversations every week to be able to say something new or try to use a new verb structure that I learned. And so I think that is part of the reason why I helped as well. Yeah.
And you've mentioned that you also having those relationships also helped you push through the desire to quit, because you don't want to lose the relationship. So anyway, you have a lot to teach. All right, Goyo, I'm sorry, take over.
Entonces, Mike, quiero que nos digas, por favor, un poquito, pues del lado en el aula, en el salón que ofreces, porque tú pasas todos los días escuchando a estudiantes que son de varios lugares, pero especialmente del mundo hispano, y has identificado, supongo, ciertas tendencias que si simplemente escuchas o lees el idioma inglés, no necesariamente vas a detectar, distinguir cierta clase de errores. Entonces, ¿qué dirías tú a nuestros oyentes que están aprendiendo inglés? Okay, you need to focus on listening to this, or listening to these sounds, or reading this type of structure, because you're not able to sort of self-regulate, through this. If you'll focus on these things, your English will improve.
Okay. In English or in Spanish?
Como tú quieras. Y
Okay,
a mí me gusta la mezcla. Entonces,
okay.
¿qué tal en español principalmente? Okay.
Okay, arranco en español. Yo diría que, voy a tocar el tema de la literatura y todo eso después, pero la primera cosa que se me vino a la mente fue que muchos de mis estudiantes, esto no pasa con todos mis estudiantes, estoy hablando específicamente de mis estudiantes hispanoparlantes, lo que noto en cuanto a la pronunciación es cuando una palabra en inglés empieza con S, muchos de mis estudiantes quieren colocar en su mente, en su pronunciación, una E enfrente de SS. Entonces, si nos pongamos a pensar en la palabra skate, obviamente ustedes saben, pero siempre quieren decir skate. Y siempre les tengo que decir, mira, la palabra no es skate, empieza con skate. Entonces, en cuanto a la pronunciación, es algo que noto que se les hace muy difícil a veces, pero no es algo que no pueden hacer. O sea, nada más tiene que enfocarse en quitar ese sonido de su pronunciación. Además, algo que noto es que, ¿saben? ¿No? En español, si estás empezando una oración hablando de un tema o una idea en general, como digamos, la religión, el feminismo, la reconstrucción, algo así, un tema así, en español empieza con el artículo el o la. En inglés no pasa así. Entonces, mis estudiantes, cuando quieren, digamos, porque enseño estudiantes en la secundaria, si están hablando de la reconstrucción, digamos, reconstruction, en esa etapa de la historia de Estados Unidos, quieren decir the reconstruction. Y sí se puede decir, pero sería mejor decir reconstruction was when, or la religión, en vez de decir la religión es algo bueno para las personas, dicen the religion is good for people, en vez de decir religion is good for some people. Entonces, esas cosas, cuando tratan de traducir palabra por palabra, se les hace muy difícil. Además, algo que noto es que saben, ¿no? En inglés, si está, la única excepción en este caso de lo que voy a decir es el verbo can o poder o to be able to. Pero por lo general en inglés, si vas a usar o vas a decir dos verbos pegados, enseguidos, ¿no? Como yo I want y después otro verbo, o I like y después otro verbo. Muchas veces quieren traducir como hacen en español y decir, no, o sea, se les olvida decir to en frente del segundo verbo. Entonces, I like to dance, no es I like dance. Or I want to go, I want go to Florida. O sea, muchas veces se les olvida eso también. Entonces, serían las primeras cosas que se me vienen a la mente. Por lo general, si un estudiante le echa ganas al proceso por las similitudes que tienen inglés y español, usualmente les va bien, o sea, con un poco de corrección y si están expuestos al idioma en casa, pero lo que diría al inicio serían esas cosas, son las cosas que se les hace muy difíciles.
Wow, pearls of wisdom, a lot to process there. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask your opinion of one other tendency that Gabe and I have noticed, and that is if you have two or more consonants that kind of knock into each other. If I want to say correctly, katali, the majority of speakers that I know would say something like correctly instead of correctly. What would you have to say about that?
Another one is ST or STS. Sorry, I'm struggling with it myself. So like if you were going to say liberals are elitists, they're often elitists. That's very hard to say sometimes for my friends that speak Spanish. So I don't know if you've noticed that.
I have. A lot of times in your case, Gabe, what you just said, elitists will be elitists. It'll just be the S. You won't hear the T, you know? And although I am a stickler for understandable pronunciation, in cases like that, I don't really like force the kids to stress themselves to get that, because honestly, I, again, have had professors in college from Brazil that are teaching me calculus, and they might say elitist. I know what they're saying. I understand what they're saying. So me personally, this goes in line with my whole, so to your point, Greg, yes, I noticed that problem as well. And I try my best to articulate the differences there. And I try to, enunciate so that they can hear all the consonants at the end of words. But if I notice that it's just frustrating a student or it's not coming out, I don't push it, because, and this is a sidebar, but my whole language learning philosophy is I, as a non-native Spanish speaker, am never trying to be perceived as a native speaker. I don't think that's a good goal for my mental health. I don't think it's a good goal for my linguistic self-esteem, if that makes sense. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I could try my best. Me puedo esforzar tanto para sonar como si naciera, no sé, en Colombia o en Mexico, lo que sea. But somebody's they're going to hear it, And so at a certain point, as long as I'm enunciating my words and I'm speaking clearly, I'm speaking with proper grammar, and I'm understood, I consider that to be me speaking standard good Spanish. And I view it the same way for non-native English speakers. Again, I've had teachers that have taught me statistics from India, from Brazil, even thinking back to my Spanish teachers in high school, they did not speak with perfect English accents, but I understood Mr. Rosario completely. He and I had great conversations. He taught me a lot. I'm not saying I learned a lot in Spanish class, because I really didn't, but either way, he taught me a lot about life. We just talked. So that's my perspective. Again, I know everybody's goals are different, but if, coming from the filter of Mike Ben, that's my perspective on that.
That is so hugely helpful. So hugely helpful. That's one of the things that Greg if you can call it scolding, it's one of the things that he does is he's the scolds me about the most is that I beat myself up. Me castigué, me castigo. I beat
Mhm.
myself up over not sounding like a native, and you're right. I work with a guy that speaks perfect English in many ways, de Venezuela. But he came here
Mhm.
when he was 13 or 14. And so he
Mhm.
still does not sound like a native, and it doesn't bother him. It's just, it doesn't bother any of us. I think it makes him more interesting. And sometimes I'm like, I kind of wish I sounded like that. He sounds kind of like Antonio Banderas when he speaks. But it is,
Yep.
this idea of language self-esteem is something I've never heard before. Language learner self-esteem, is that what you call it? Say it again.
Yeah, linguistic self-esteem. Yeah,
Linguistic
linguistic
self-esteem.
self-esteem.
And mine is so low. So I'm going to really work on that in 2025 since this is the new year.
Yeah, definitely.
Y quiero que noten los oyentes en el internet. Cuando yo digo que me doy cuenta de estas tendencias, no estoy diciendo, hay que corregirlas y no hablar imperfectamente o sin perfección. Lo que quiero decir es nada más que escucha la distinción. Si alguien te dice corrects, si tú sabes que hay CTS al final de esta palabra, no puedes decir corrects, pero puedes escucharla y eventualmente quizás puedas decirlo mejor en el futuro, pero nunca quiero darle pena a nadie. Si puedes comunicarte en 2 idiomas, es un milagro. Es como un superpoder que Gabo y yo pasamos mucho tiempo hablando de este superpoder. Sí, queremos mejorar. No cabe duda.
I guess the other thing is if you're hearing it and you're aware of corrects, you can also, you're more likely to be able to write it correctly, to spell it, to deletrear correctly. Because if you're really keying in on that sound, even if you're not making it yourself, if you're keying in on that sound when you hear it, you're more likely to write CTS at the end of it instead of just TS, for example, or S.
Agreed. And Gabe, you mentioning that side note, but referencing Greg's initial question, something else that I noticed that my native Spanish speakers do when they're learning English, and this happens for all ELL students, English language learning students, I've noticed, is they tend to forget. So it's funny, right? At learning Spanish, we don't have the luxury of forgetting conjugation. We don't have the luxury of that. Like if you say yo bebes, it doesn't make sense, right? Well, in English, you can get away with saying he drink water every day. You can get away with that and be understood. And so a lot of my students use that. They get away with that. I always have to remind them like, hey, if you used he, she, or it as the subject of that word, that verb needs to end with an S with the exception of the verb can. That's the exception a lot of times in English. But with the exception, you don't say he cans drink. But outside of that, you need to remember that at the end of these verbs, you have to conjugate. And again, it's a luxury that they have learning English because our verb structures are not super complex. But it's a luxury that they shouldn't take advantage of because to me, that really hits me when I hear someone say like, yeah, it snow every winter. Like, huh? It snows. Just to add the S, it snows every winter. So that's something else that I hear a lot.
That's a really good point. And that's those incorrect conjugations are, to me, the way people are going to identify me as a non-native speaker immediately, because incorrect conjugations more than incorrect pronunciation. When I'm relaxed, my pronunciation is pretty good. But I will never have a native grasp of era versus fue, for example. So it's interesting to hear that.
Yo tampoco. Yo tampoco.
My first employer was a Korean martial arts master. And he had very limited English, but he used the gerund form of every verb to communicate, and everyone could understand him. So he would say to me, "You're needing vacuuming, right? You need to go vacuum the floor." Or hurry and changing. And we understood it. It's just he didn't sound native. So being understood and understanding, I guess, is the real essence of communication. But we all sort of strive for this ideal that you are getting very close to. So this is helpful to hear.
Mike, in our time that's left, would you please tell us about your internet presence? You have a very successful website or channel on YouTube and other things. Tell us how we can find you.
Okay, so when I first, after 1 month of learning Spanish, I had what I was looking for on YouTube was some way to gauge what this process might look like. I wanted to know, like, all right, the average learner after 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, how do they sound learning Spanish? I scoured the internet for that and could not find it at all. So my intention with uploading, so initially I started on YouTube by uploading my monthly progress in Spanish. Part of it, I'm not going to lie, I did have the foresight to know, like, all right, this doesn't exist on YouTube, so it might help someone coming after me. But the honest, pure intention was to record myself so that every month I had some tangible way to see that I was growing. And so every month for the first 10 to 12 months of learning Spanish, I recorded my Spanish progress on YouTube. And I started to notice that a mix of native Spanish speakers and native English speakers started watching my videos. And so I started to notice that I was getting some traction. And eventually I started to notice that I was getting enough traction that I thought, hey, maybe taking a trip to Colombia might actually make this YouTube thing that I'm taking super casually, it might make it grow. And when I went to Colombia after about a year, maybe like 11 months of learning Spanish, recorded my experience speaking Spanish out there and exploring cultures like that. And then from there, my channel started to grow what I would consider exponentially. Right now, I have like 21,000 subscribers. And I did not start YouTube with the intention of being a YouTuber, but that sparked my growth. And then from there, I just have been doing a mix of recording my conversations, speaking Spanish, exposing the world to other native English speakers across the world, across the English speaking world in Australia, in the UK, in the United States, and other countries that have learned Spanish to a fluent level. Once I developed some level of confidence saying that I'm fluent in Spanish, I started to give tips and advice on how to learn Spanish and learn languages in general. And so it's a mix of just me sharing my experience learning the language, traveling, advice, language learning in general. On top of that, I decided to write a book to help other people, again, behind me, learn Spanish in a way that I think would be efficient, like with efficient and logical explanations of some of these grammar concepts that are a lot of times made much more complicated than they need to be. And so I have a book on Amazon where I call it like a complete guide to learning Spanish. Again, it's not going to make you speak like me, but it will teach you how certain things work in a way that is not super sophisticated. I don't use a lot of grammar terms. I just kind of try to make as best as I can equivalents to English and Spanish to show you different tricks and look fors. And then the last thing I like to say is that I do have a private Spanish group for those people that are interested in learning Spanish seriously and getting my input in that process. And the reason I did that is because every week or so, I'm like super busy. Like I teach full time. I tutor like 15 hours a week. I'm in the process of trying to get another graduate degree. I still like to cook and work out and like still play tennis and still expand my Spanish and read. And so I was getting a lot of emails from people saying, hey, Mike, could I meet with you for 30 minutes? You could give me some advice. Could I meet with you for an hour? And every week that would be like 10 people. That's 10 hours a week. And I just don't have that, unfortunately, if I want to still go to the grocery store and like eat food. And so I created a private group where I sketched out or etched out time for those people that are serious to meet me and get my input and get some advice. And so I have a private group with about 25 people right now that are getting my help in a one-on-one setting or a small group setting. And then this year, if all things work out, we plan on taking a trip to, right now they're saying they want to go to Mexico. And so I'll also be, entre comillas, leading a group to Mexico. I can't really lead them. I guess linguistically I'd be leading them, but I've been to Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, but they're considering going to Mexico City. So that's another thing that I do as well.
Well, give us your handles.
Yeah, tell us how we can find you.
Sorry about that. So yeah, my channel, I only have YouTube. I don't have any social media outside of YouTube. And my YouTube channel is Mike Ben, MikeBen. Just shortened versions of my full name, Michael Benjamin, Mike Ben.
And what is the name of your book on Amazon?
The name of my book, sorry again, I'm not used to promoting myself, guys, is Mike Ben's, I don't even know the name of my book, Mike Ben's Guide to Learning Spanish. Mike Ben's Guide to Learning Spanish is the name of the book. So again, I'm not, guys, I'll say this too. I know a lot of people are on the internet, like, even with my YouTube channel right now, I'm not trying to make it super successful. Like, I just do this as a hobby to kind of help people that, that need the help. And these, I'm not good at promoting myself because I'm not trying to sell the book and make it a super bestseller. Like, I just have it there for those that want it, So I don't need, it's called Mike Ben's Guide to Learning Spanish. That's the name of the book.
Tanta humildad.
We love it.
Well, Mike, thank you for spending some time with us. He and I both live in Atlanta, Oyentes, and we see snow, la nieve, about once every 5 years. And yesterday, it snowed. Nevó, ¿sí? Nevó en Atlanta por la primera vez hace años. So did you walk around in the snow yesterday?
I did a little bit. I'm just, I've had maybe in my life, I don't know, maybe like 6 to 8 snow days. And so it doesn't like hit me as much as it did when I was a kid. But yeah, I went out there. I think when I have kids in the future and I see their joy and their experience, like experiencing snow for the first time and throwing snowballs and all that kind of stuff, it'll hit me more. Right now, it's just like, oh, it snowed. Okay, cool. I went out there and like enjoyed it a little bit, but I didn't play it in or anything.
That's one of the funny things as adults, we want to stay in when we see the sun. I don't want to go out in that, but our kids are like, let's go outside. Let's go. And we're like, why?
Right.
I forced myself to go outside, but I'm much older than Mike. And so it was scary because I'm walking on icy roads and sidewalks, and a couple of times, pues, casi me caí. Mantuve mi balance, pero apenas. So it was a little scary. But I forced myself as an old man to go outside and look at the pretty snow. So Gabe sees snow every year, so no es ninguna cosa super urgente para él. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time, and I know you have other things going on today, other interviews, so good luck in all your humble enterprises.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you guys for interviewing me as well. Again, I think this is a great resource for all learners of languages, to be honest. Like, even if you're learning Spanish, I think there's insight here that can help a lot of people. So, and I know that because I've listened to you guys for a while. So
thank you. Yeah, it's very nice to know that we've been listened to by Mike Ben. I think that's a big deal. Hey, we want to thank our guest, Mike Benjamin, or Mike Ben, for coming on our show. And now it's time for our quiz. What sticks in your brain after one listening to our show about Mike and learning English? Question number 1. What subject in school did Mike Ben teach before he became an English teacher? Right? Mike is an English teacher now, but he didn't teach English in the past. Did he teach A, science, B, mathematics, C, history, or D, art?
Science, mathematics, history, or art. Okay, I remember being angry and jealous that Mike Ben can also do mathematics as well as speak really good Spanish, because I am bad at mathematics. So yes, he did B. He taught mathematics before he became an English teacher.
That is correct. All right, question number 2. Which word did Mike Ben say that we don't put an S on in the he, she form in English? So when we use he or she in English, we put an S on the end of an action or verb. For example, walk becomes walks. Walk becomes walks. But one word, one action, one verb does not receive this treatment. Is it A, put, B, get, C, can, or D, do?
Put, get, can, or do. So one of these doesn't get an S in the he or she form. So, gosh, all of these do, don't they? Let's see. Well, D is weird because do does become does, but it still has an S. Okay, so the answer is C, can, because you wouldn't say she cans speak English like a native. It would have to be she can.
That's right.
Speak English like a native.
You are correct. Yeah.
All right.
Well done. And our final quiz question, what city do both Mike Ben and Goyo live near in Georgia? Is it A, Akron, B, Atlanta, C, Anchorage, or D, Alpharetta?
Akron, Atlanta, Anchorage, or Alpharetta. Okay, I know you live in Georgia. I'm smart enough to remember that. And Alpharetta and Atlanta are both in Georgia. But you both live near B, Atlanta.
That is correct. Atlanta, the home of the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta Braves, is also where Mike Ben and I live. Well, we live near Atlanta. He lives on the other side of Atlanta for me, but Atlanta is between us. Well, oyentes, we want to thank you for listening to this and all of our episodes over these years that we've been on the air, and we hope that
it's a great benefit to you, and that you'll remember some of the things Mike said about not having to be. It doesn't have to be perfect, and then ultimately, don't give up.
We want to remind you that the name of our podcast is No Te Rindas. Don't give up. As Mike Ben says, it is not necessary for you to speak perfectly in English to be understood, nor is it even desirable, a good idea for perfection in things like pronunciation to be your goal. That's not the point. Don't give up, guys. We appreciate you using us as one of your tools. And we hope that some of what we say here is helpful for you on your journey. Gabe, I love you. Good talking to you today.
I love you. I had fun interviewing Mike Ben. Guys, be sure to check out his channel if you want some encouragement about how you can learn things at your own pace. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Bye-bye.